and welcome. My name is Tiffany. I'm with the Southeast Project. And today I'm going to share with you a super exciting event that we have coming up. It is called How to Support the LGBTQIA plus youth community. It is Tuesday, June 23rd at the Franklin Road Library here in Franklin Township. It's a transformative event that's designed to support parents, guardians, friends, and allies of the LGBTQIA plus youth, focused on providing a safe and supportive space where you can explore and learn how to affirm your loved ones while still embracing your Christian faith. Our keynote speaker is a good friend of mine, John Jones. He is a speaker, advocate, and faith-driven leader, the founder and president of Greenwood Pride, and he's also the Indiana State Ambassador and Central District Representative for USA Prides. We're very excited to have him for this event. With that said, this is Julie, and I'm excited to ask her some questions today around being a parent to someone in the LGBTQIA plus youth community. So we're just going to dive right in. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Tiffany.
All right. So how can parents move from a place of fear or shock to a place of affirmation and celebration?
Love that. That's probably one of the biggest questions, because I think that's really the first question is, what do you do with that first answer when they first say something to you and invite you into their community, into their lives? What do we say? How do we respond? Because if someone says something that you're not expecting, you are going to be a little shocked. So as with parents, I think our journey is always shocking. I think every time our kid does something, whether that we're surprised at an award or surprised that they, did something private, we're like, what happened? We're going to be surprised. So, however, we're really good at saying, hey, you know what? I've got some feelings and I'm just going to put them to the side here and say, I love you and we got this. I think start with that. Start by leading with love, and always kind of, as parents, we're always kind of saying, I've got some feelings and that's okay. And we validate those feelings, but I'm going to take care of those later on. We never want to put our feelings on our child. We never want to have them the reason why I'm having maybe some negative feelings or some confusion or some, hesitation. We want to put those to the side, deal with those later, and lead with love and say, I love you. I got you. We're going to do this together.
Absolutely. Just like with a newborn baby, right? You're doing it for the first time and you're going to lead with love and figure it out along the way.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So second question, what are some strategies for handling religious or personal beliefs that might conflict with supporting an LGBTQIA plus child?
That's a big one. Of course, I did struggle with this. I grew up with in a background that did not really allow anybody from the LGBTQIA plus community into their church. And so I grew up believing it was wrong. And so my first step was to learn. I needed to dive into the Bible, dive into what does this mean and what does it mean for me and my family. And so I started asking a lot of questions. Luckily, I had some good people in church communities that were able to lead me to some real great books and really guide me along with what these passages actually said. Those passages that we typically get clobbered with about how bad it is. I was able to get into the Bible more, which was really great for my faith journey. Was I read the Bible more than I did probably prior to my child letting me into their lives. So I would say start with that. Start with learning, asking some questions and saying and ask questions about yourself. What is it that I believe? What is it that I've grown to believe? What is it that someone told me I need to believe? And where do I go with that from here? Ask those questions. Don't assume that what you know or what someone told you or maybe something that you grew up with is the only way. And because that's where I was, honestly. I was there. And so I had to ask a lot of questions and dive into the Bible and get to the root of it and say, what does Jesus say?
Yep.
What does Jesus say about loving my child? And I think we need to start with that.
Absolutely. It's, getting rid of those limiting beliefs, the ones that you were told to believe.
Yes.
Understanding the context within the Bible, when it was written, who it was written for, and, really dissecting it from there. So that's great.
Yes.
All right, next question. How can families navigate conversations with relatives who hold opposing views?
Ooh.
I'm sure you've been met with some of that.
Unfortunately, yes. I I wasn't blind to the idea, but I really thought, oh, I have this bubble and I have great friends and great family. And I do. I have a lot of great people in my corner. However, I have lost friends and lost family through this journey. And those are the hard ones. And I think it kind of depends on what their questions are or what their challenge is. For me specifically, I had someone that challenged in my family, and they were not in a place of openness or ready to learn. And if they're not in a place where they're open and ready to learn, just like I had to be open and ready to learn, then I simply just tell them, I just need two things from you then. I need you to love my child just like you did 2 minutes ago before I told you anything else about my child. And then respect my child. And that just means using my child's pronouns and my child's chosen name. And that's it. I'm not asking to completely transform any of your ideals or your thoughts. I'm just asking you to love my child and respect my child. And
Absolutely.
I think that's what we should do with all people and all kinds of things. Love people, respect people, and that's it. And so if you're not able to have any further like theological discussions and really kind of have some discussions about why they believe that, it's okay. You put that to the side and say, okay, then love my child just like you did and respect my child. And this is how. And leave it at that. And then, of course, if you've got someone that's more open and willing to understand, absolutely. Open that table for discussion. Talk to them a little bit about what their biblical beliefs are. And then we can take that further and really dive in and get to a little bit deeper understanding about why they chose to believe like that.
Right. That's great. Yeah. Basic human, like, respect. Like, just respect my child, love my child. That's it. Like, the basics.
Yes.
And it's shocking to me how many people can't even do that.
Yeah. I like to say it really is. It's pretty easy. You know, did you love my kid 5 minutes ago? You did, didn't you? Absolutely. Well, then keep doing that. And then, you know what? We all want to show mutual respect for each other, regardless of what that means.
Right.
And then do that. And it's really not that hard.
Right. They're the same person.
They are.
They're the same person. Yep. Okay, so what specific questions should parents ask school administrators to ensure safety?
Great question. My oldest is going to be a senior, and luckily we were able to start with, she has a 504. And so we already were ready to be prompted with having that beginning of the school year discussion about what does she need to support her anyway. And so call a meeting and really just ask those questions. How are you going to support my child? How are you going to ensure that they are safe? I think it boils down to those two questions. Like, what do you guys typically do? What have you done for other children? Tell me about the experience here at this school. Have you had any experience, working with a child that is transgender or LGBT, anywhere on the spectrum of LGBTQIA? And what have you felt like you needed to do? Have you had any, challenges or... and how did you guys handle those challenges? And just see how they have evolved. Because what I found is that really the schools that I've been in contact with have really evolved a lot and have been able to be truly supportive. So ask those questions. Say again, what historically have you guys been doing, and if we need to change, how do we communicate with you what our changes are and what our needs are? And our school was really good with saying that. And they said, let us know how we can help. Let us know what you need from us. And they were willing to really accommodate. I think with anything, if your child breaks a leg, if your child gets sick, you're going to have those communications with the school anyway. So just keep that open dialogue with the school. Let them know what you need and make sure that they're ready to respond in the ways that you need and that your child needs.
That's great. Yeah, just the encouraging the continual conversation and making sure that they're flexible enough to go with, the changes that are happening or eventually happen.
And then follow up.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they say a change is going to happen, and schools are big. There's a lot of kids
Right.
in there, a lot of people, a lot of things to take care of, and I understand that. But then follow up and say, hey, my child is sharing this with me. Can you tell me where are we at with this?
That's
and
great.
just keep that continuing. And it's okay. I always say, hey, parents, you've got to be your child's best advocate.
Absolutely.
So just keep following up, keep having great positive conversations with schools, and usually they respond pretty well.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I love that you said how they're evolving. That's so great to hear, just because children, youth are more open to being, as we call it, out than even just a decade ago. And so the schools really embracing that and making the changes and ensuring safety for the youth is huge. I love that you've had such a good experience.
I was very pleasantly surprised. This conversation actually just happened just this past fall, and I thought, oh my gosh, I wasn't in that school enough to know exactly what their population consisted of. And again, like we sat there and she goes, oh no, we have a lot of experience with this, and this is how, and it really was wonderful to hear.
That's good. And there's not, unfortunately, schools out there exist who don't have the resources to be able to do that kind of thing. They don't maybe have the population to deal with it, or even the population of youth who are out. So if it's just one or two, they may just, brush them to the side. So hopefully we can get to a point where every kid feels safe at school.
Yeah. And that's where I say, then that's where your voice is in, Mom, Dad. That's where you come in and say, well, let's sit down. Let's have some conversations. These are the things I've learned. These are the things that helps my child feel safe and feel supported in my home. And maybe we can, use some of these strategies here in your school. And so it's okay if you do come, because they're, not everybody's big Indianapolis schools. We have lots of small schools around, and I love that. But within that small community, they just may not have had as much experience as maybe the bigger schools. So just, again, open up that table and say, hey, well, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about what we need to make sure we have in place, and
Absolutely.
the verbiage and the vocabulary that we use. And, again, I think being open is really, having that open dialogue is really kind of where you're going to have your success.
Yeah. And again, being your child's biggest advocate. So even if it is a smaller school and you're the first person to kind of open the doors to that kind of conversation, the school may not be against it. You may be pleasantly surprised. They're like willing to work with you. Like, okay, yeah, like let's create like a plan together, versus being turned down. So I think a lot more schools are going in that direction, and hopefully parents are going to have the courage to speak up when they need to.
Yeah.
So
in my heart of hearts, all schools are there to love on kids, to be there for kids. That's why we became teachers and administrators. We're there because we love kids and we want to help kids grow. And hopefully not just academically, hopefully the whole child. And so I don't have any ill intentions. I don't think there's any schools out there that have ill intentions. I think they're all here to help children. And I think if parents can come alongside of the school administration, the school staff and teachers, then I think that is the way to bridge that and say, absolutely, we want to help your child as much as you do. So coming together as an advocate and school staff, I think will be beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So how can parents and educators support trans and gender non-conforming students in schools? I think this just kind of ties into what we were talking about, but maybe a little more specific, considering you do have a trans daughter. So,
yeah, I think every child is different, and we see that in education. Every child's learning needs are different. Every child's listening and speaking needs are different. The way they're going to take in information is different. And so we're already pretty good in our schools at saying, hey, I need to look at each individual student and what their needs are. So this is just another additional thing of what we're going to look at and say, what does this child need? And depending on the age of your child, we're going to look at the child first and say, hey, kid, what do you need? What do you need to feel loved and supported in school? And typically we're going to ask for things like, again, like we did with the families, asking for you to love them and to respect them. And what does that look like? Again, that might look differently for everybody, but bottom line, usually it's, at least for a child that's transgender, using their preferred name and their preferred pronouns. And then leave it at that. Let's respect their space, just like I respect your space. And I'm not going to ask you a bunch of personal questions. You don't need to ask them any more personal questions about themselves or what's going to happen. Just respect their space and say, oh, yeah, absolutely. So ask for, again, that respect of names, pronouns, and then, of course, bathroom usage. And ask them about what they have with their specific policies or their school local procedures for their bathrooming. Most schools nowadays do already have something set up. And if not, again, that's another conversation you can have. How do we keep my child safe in the restroom?
Yes.
And that's one of those conversations to have as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We're moving right along. I love this. So, how can adults better understand and use pronouns correctly? I know for me, for a minute there at least, when they, them became, a pronoun to use, it took my brain a minute to kind of like, wait, what? That's one person. I still used it, but I was struggling internally to understand it. And now it's just natural to use that as a pronoun. So yeah, how can you help adults who were in my position maybe a few years ago just better understand and use those pronouns correctly?
Yeah. Tiffany, I was there too. I love English, and I love English structures and context and all things English. And I too was like, I'm sorry, no, they and them is plural. I know that. I remember the little charts that my teachers told me. However, what I think of is often, like, if my kid has some friends and they talk about so and so at school and they have this story to share, that I might say, oh well, where did they get their new shoes? Because maybe they came in and said, so and so has these new shoes, and I say, oh well, where did they get them? I think we've used that vocabulary for a long time, because I wasn't sure if my child was talking about a girl or a boy. We already use that kind of as a very general term when I said, well, where did they get those shoes? Oh, maybe you ask them ask them to ask their mom. I already said they and their mom, only because I did not know the child that she was talking about. And so I think we've already used it. So I think that's one thing to put in your head, first of all, is that we've always used this language. When we have a language that is a little bit more inclusive of everything, like I said, when I didn't know my child's friend, it was just more inclusive because I didn't want to assume it was a boy or assume it was a girl. So first of all, remember that. Remember that we've been using a little bit of this language already.
Right.
And then, again, ask the child, it's totally fine to ask a person, hey, my name is Julie and I go by she, her pronouns. Your name is, and what are your pronouns? Luckily, again, that is just language we are starting to use, and people are very thankful that you want to, again, be invited into their life and that they want to share that with you. So just ask them, and then practice, and then give yourself some grace, because you're going to forget.
Right.
My child has been using she, her pronouns for almost a year now, and I still slip up because it's been a lot of years of me using other pronouns for her, and just give yourself some grace, because even me, that I've been trying really hard to use use her pronouns appropriately, I've slipped up, and my child knows. It's not that I'm doing it out of malice. If you're not doing it out of malice, if you're not doing it, to be negative or just to be on purpose, they know that you're trying. They know that where your heart is and what your intentions are. And as long as your heart and your intentions are pure and kind, then that person typically knows that that's what your intentions are. But just keep practicing and keep saying their pronouns, and give yourself grace whenever you have a little slip up.
Absolutely. I love that. That is so important, because I was so afraid that I would slip up and they would get upset with me. And then I realized that they are also going through, the changes and referring to themselves and sharing with their friends their preferred pronouns that were different from before. And so, it's, again, you're alongside them. You're doing this together. The intentions, your heart's in the right place. The intentions are good. And so really taking all of that into consideration, adults, like, we're human. We're going to slip up. And being in the LGBTQIA community for as long as I have been, friends and family, and being around all of that, I have relaxed. I've not been so hard on myself when it comes to, I slipped up. Like, my best friend's firstborn uses they, them pronouns. They're non-binary, gender fluid. And it took me a long time to remember to use those pronouns. Just the other day, I slipped up. Not in front of them, in front of my husband. And I was like, oh, wait. And I corrected myself. But just remembering, not be so hard on yourself, and they know your heart's in the right place. Again, it's just another, like, basic respect for the person. My name is Tiffany. I use she, her pronouns. And your name is, and what are your preferred pronouns. When I worked my corporate job, my signature had she, her next to my name. And I was the first person within my company to do that. And I worked for a very large corporation because I sat on the board of our LGBT employee resource group as an ally. And I was like, I think we should do this. I'm going to do it. And so I did. And I sent an email with it, and I was so scared. But it was so well received. It was so well received. And then everybody started doing it. And it was like, oh, like.
Yeah, we normalize it. We make it just part of what we do. I mean, imagine sitting there in a large meeting. I work in the schools, and so if I go to a case conference meeting, and if I start and I introduce myself as, hi, I'm Julie, and I use she, her pronouns, you're not sure who's always at the table. And imagine a person being scared to really say who they are. And then once you say that, if you start with that and say, hi, I'm Julie, I use she, her pronouns, imagine the sense of peace or that feeling of just acceptance and understanding that person may have across the table from you, and you don't even know.
Right.
So let's just normalize it and make it just part of what we're doing, and that doesn't hurt anybody at all.
And it also tells those who may not be out at work that you're a safe person.
Absolutely.
So I love that. Okay, let's see here. So next question, how can allies foster an atmosphere of inclusion in their homes and communities?
I would say, again, start with that respect of their pronouns. Ask them what they want to use, ask them, and then use them. And so I think always using that language and making sure you're not just using that language in front of them, making sure whatever language you use, to someone next to them. So it's not just like, oh, we're putting on a show for this person. We really are doing this at all times. And we know it's not just when that person's in the room. So making sure that we use that. Also, I guess, inclusion in their homes. That's where I would say use their names. And I think that's where it starts, really.
And just affirming them as, beyond how they feel inside, but then affirming them how they want to look, how they want to dress, how they want to, become as they grow.
Absolutely. Find one thing to affirm them with. Every day, every week, just find something, whether it's like, wow, I really like that top on you, or wow, I really like that dress, or I just think your eyes are glowing today. Find something to affirm in them, especially specifically if we're talking about a trans person, then affirm in them part of that transgender part of their life, and understand, especially as they're first coming out, to where they still may not feel like who's going to love me for who I am. And so every time my child wears something a little bit more on the feminine side, I make sure I affirm that and say, oh, I love that dress, and I also will share that with other family members. And, because some people will say, well, why is she not wearing a dress today? And I say, well, why aren't you wearing a dress today? Like, just because you're not wearing a dress doesn't make you less of a woman, right? And so, but having those conversations within your environments, within your home, will help that atmosphere and help that environment be more positive, inclusive.
Okay. Where was I? Here we go. How can parents distinguish between a passing phase and a deeply rooted identity?
Very good question. What I like to say is that your child has been thinking and feeling this a lot longer than the moment that they decided to let you into their lives. And so typically it's not something that they just started thinking about yesterday and then they shared with you today. It's been something that's been typically going on for months, years, and years possibly. And so have that conversation with your child, and I just simply ask my child, can you tell me a little bit about your journey, and when did you start to, realize some of these things about yourself, and tell me about your journey. And typically they will tell you. Again, my child was like, as soon as I started really thinking, like third grade, second grade, like it's still when anybody can have a little bit of identity for themselves, whether they feel like, oh, I'm like the athletic kid, or I'm this kind of kid, when they start to like build their own personalities and their own identities, that's when my child realized that she identified as female instead of male. And so listen to your child.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's step one. If they said, my child simply clearly said, oh, I've thought about this for years. This is what I've thought about for years, Mom. Then who am I to question something that has been in your head and part of your soul for years? And so there is no need to really question that any further. Being transgender is there's not it's not a box, and I try not to put anybody in a box. So it's not just, well, it's not a phase because he's doing this, this, and this, and this. So I try not to say being transgender means you've got to do this, this, and this, and this. That's like saying, again, Tiffany, if you're a cis woman, if you identify as a woman, then you have to wear makeup and you have to do this and you have to do that. I don't want to put you in a box. So the same thing, I wouldn't put my child in a box. So just don't second guess them, just like you would do with anything. If they say, hey, Mom, I felt really sad at school today. Well, you wouldn't be like, no, you don't. You don't feel sad, do you? You wouldn't second guess anything they were feeling any other time. Why are you second guessing this? So believe your child,
Validate that.
Validate them. So I would start with that and say, and if you've got questions, give it time. Give it time, Again, support your kid, love your kid, and say, I love you, and I'm along with you on this journey, whatever that may look like. We do that all the time with kids. They want to do soccer this year. No, they want to do ballet next year, and they want to do mud wrestling next year. We just go along for the ride half the time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So you can go along with the ride for this as well. And just, again, show your kid love and see where the ride takes you. It may not be as scary as some of those rides that I've been on at Universal. So take it one day at a time and follow your child and let them lead you, because they're the ones that are inside their heart and their brain.
Let them lead you. And it's going to evolve and change. That's the other part of it that a lot of parents, I think, can be surprised with. My best friend's firstborn came out as gay first, and then bi, and then gender nonconforming. Or non-binary. So it's a journey. They're also figuring it out as they go along. And so being willing to have that openness and evolve with them is huge.
Absolutely.
So
like I said, it's the same thing if my kid wants to wear 4 earrings or 1 pair of earrings, and they want to play soccer or ballet. You're just going to go follow their lead.
Yep.
Follow the lead.
Nobody's being put in a box.
No.
Right.
No.
I love that. Okay, so how can parents advocate for their children in the community? So maybe outside of the school world, thinking more maybe outside of even an accepting and affirming church, within the community, if you're going to maybe correct someone for using incorrect pronouns or the incorrect name, things like that, day-to-day interactions, or if you're going to the grocery store, someone has a question or someone's staring, or how do you, how do you advocate for your children in some scenarios like that?
Yeah. Again, don't be shy, speak up. I think that's one of the things I've learned over this past year is that I'm trying not to just this is not just our little home thing, it's okay. This is who she is, and we're proud of that. And so, my first step kind of was starting to wear some more pride shirts and some shirts that had a little bit of a meaning. And my kid was like, wow, Mom, that's a cool shirt. And she actually appreciated that I had a message, and I had a message to say. And I could say it in a nice way, but it didn't always have to be me on a street corner with a picket or anything. I just was sharing my message and sharing my support of my child kind of silently for a little bit. But she noticed, she saw that. She sees, the rainbow earrings or the little pin or something. So she sees some of those things. So start with a little bit of as my youngest would call it, drip, and have a little pride drip once in a while. And I think that helps. And that helps the community, I think, go, oh, this is a person that, looks like they are affirming of the LGBTQIA community. And so maybe I've got questions, maybe I don't. Always, again, lead with love, even those people that may have questions or stares. And sometimes I'm teaching my child to do this as well. Sometimes she'll snap at someone and say, what you staring at? But I think there's times people have stared at me and I might want to say, what you staring at? So, learning how to do that with classes is, I think that's part of us growing up and part of maturing even as an adult. And so I simply, of course, never get offended. Try never to get offended, but simply just say, "Oh yeah, no, Alice would like a cup of coffee," yes, she does want a refill, and I would just simply correct without really outing the mistake, I guess, and just be polite and pleasant, and use their name and use their pronouns, and make it part of a natural conversation instead of like, oh no, her name is this and her pronouns are this. We don't need to have it a big thing.
Right.
But continuing to use her name and her pronouns in the community, I think is big. And I think that's when people will see it. And then they see it's not that really big of a deal.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do, like at a restaurant or at a store. And it happens a lot because, like we all do, we have a lot of fluidity in the way we dress or makeup, and sometimes they will automatically call my child a male, and then I'm always quick to jump in and not be shy of anything that might happen. I just say, oh yeah, she does look great today, or you do like her shoes, or whatever it is.
Right.
And so because if I were to stay quiet, then what message is that sending to her?
Exactly.
So speak up.
Right. That's great. Yeah, it's hard to not stay silent, but doing it in the right way is big.
And sometimes the right place. Sometimes the place is not always, ideal for you to actually have any more of a conversation. If you've already seen some, maybe hostility or anger or some assumptions that are probably not going to go smoothly in a community. Again, I would do that whether we're fighting about the Spurs or the Knicks, I would still not pick a fight with someone in front of my child just because, that's not what I want her to see.
Right.
So do it with love.
Yep. Everything with love. It's what Jesus tells us. I love it. Okay, what are some resources you recommend for parents and allies to learn more?
Ooh, well, come to our event on Tuesday because we are going to have lots of resources. I'm excited because as I have gone down this journey a little bit more and more and more, I am finding websites. There are books, there are websites, there are Facebook groups. There are so many great groups. There are phone numbers. We can definitely give you a whole list. The ones I have referred to mostly are like places like Gender Nexus, wonderful for anybody that is on the transgender spectrum, as well as IYG. And they have a lot of resources, not just for parents, but for youth as well. And then I do go on to Facebook a lot. There's a lot of wonderful groups of people that I found supporting and very supportive about my journey and listening as a parent and where do we go from here. And then there's a whole lot of books, but come to our event next week and we'll get you a whole list of books and websites and resources, or reach out to one of us. And Sherry told you our website and stuff, and you can find us and we'll get you some more information.
Absolutely. Creating in-person opportunities as well for the community and gathering within your community and being a resource for each other, I think is huge. And that's another reason why we have this event, so you can find your people and you can do this together and know that you're not alone when it comes to parenting someone in the LGBTQIA community. So,
yeah, because I'll be honest, that's where I was about a year ago. I wasn't sure where to start out because my child also did start out and said that she was gay back in middle school. Not the biggest of deals. But then about a year ago when she came out as transgender, I didn't know where to go. I wasn't sure what resources there were for transgender. That was a whole nother ballgame, I think, for myself. And so, having to get through and go through that research, I think that's where we have to share our experiences and have events like this, because then you start to know that there are things out there. So when this information comes to you, you might be able to then go, wait, wasn't there someone in the community that talked about this, or where can I go? And it's not so hidden. And so I love now that we are getting out into the communities a little bit more and more and sharing resources. Because again, about a year ago, I had to just do the good old Google and I wasn't sure where to start. But now I feel like we're really starting to gather resources and then share them.
Yes, that's so great. So last question for you. How have you learned to embrace your trans teen?
Ooh. Um,
Because teenagers are a whole thing all in of itself. So
they are. But as you said, teenagers are a whole thing them as they are just being themselves. That's a journey. And so hop along the ride and say you're on this journey. And again, every teenager's on a journey, and every teenager's journey is going to look different. And so for this specifically, though, this is just one part of her. It is not what defines her.
Right.
She is so much more than just a trans kid. She's a musician. She's an esports gamer. She loves outdoors and camping. There's so much more to her than just being trans. And remembering that that this is not just who she is. It is not just all about the rainbows. We are proud of who she is. We are proud and love that she trusts us to bring her into her life. But that's not the sole reason that she's alive. She's got so much more to give. And I think, but it has opened up doors for us because we've had to have some discussions, some very specific discussions and some specific action items. Again, talking to the schools, our clothing options. We've allowed some space in there for us to really talk and connect a lot. I would say a lot more than we did a year ago. As your typical teenager, maybe we didn't sit and talk all the time, but now we're finding opportunities and topics to talk all the time, and we really are just embracing our relationship. And so I have loved that her and I have grown together as a parent and a child in more ways than I might have if she hasn't had this
That's
journey.
actually making me emotional. I love that for you.
It really has, because I've had to be intentional with some of the conversations we've had to have, and they've turned into beautiful things, and it's just been a great piece of growth for our relationship, as well as really biblically as well, because she really wasn't sure about the Bible before.
Right.
And now as I've talked to her a little bit more and affirmed her and say, Jesus loves you, love. Jesus, and Jesus calls you, as a child of God. And then she listens and she's like, wait a minute,
Right.
There's more to this than this, possible negative thing that sometimes society says that it's negative. No, her faith has grown, my faith has grown, and we have grown together as a relationship. And it's been a really positive experience. Sure, there's little bumps along the way. There's going to be bumps. Again, a teenager, child, anybody's journey has little bumps along the way. But I think there's so many more beautiful things that are coming out of it.
Yep.
And that's what we hold on to during the bumpy rides and kind of look for the rainbows at the end of the road.
I love that. And that's what we all strive for and hope for when our kids grow, is having that relationship, especially when they're going through their teen years. So many people, myself included, when I was a teen, I distanced myself from my mom, and I don't want that to happen with my kids. And so I love, that's what got me emotional, because it's that's what we strive for as parents. We want to always keep our children close to us. And I love that for you and your daughter.
Thank you.
So, all right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, or any questions for me?
Not right now. I think we've covered a lot of great information, and I hope that you come next week and join us, and we are going to have even more information that evening. And then all the things that I will think about to ask and say will probably come out next week. So come have a chat with us next week.
Right. Yes. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And hang out with us next Tuesday. And again, check us out at wearesoutheast.church for more information.